Hello and welcome into A Slice of Life. For your dose of do-it-yourself motivation, I'm Eugene Loh. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, in the Singaporean context, when we talk about learning, we often imagine it to be within the sphere of academia, as in like schools, education, grades, assessments, and all of that. But today we're going to expand this idea of learning and to encompass self-growth and self-development and turbocharging our learning such that we can grow more rapidly in areas that matter to us, that help us live more fully, work more effectively, improve our relationships and all that. And we'll be covering things like motivation, overcoming barriers, deliberate practice, and other tips as well. My guest today is Kenny Toh, an international leadership consultant and executive coach with a passion for helping people uncover, develop, and apply their unique gifts to make a positive impact to the world. He has worked with leaders in Asia, Africa, Middle East, and Russia, ranging from regional CEOs and senior leaders of leading international banks, retailers, and consumer goods companies to top civil servants and energetic youth leaders of Singapore. Now, Kenny started his first career in management consultancy with Accenture and subsequently founded a few businesses, including Gone Fishing Cafe. I remember that very well. It was quite iconic at the time, quite revolutionary as well. The Coaching Academy and the Institute of Advanced Parentology. And today he is one of the Asia Pacific directors of Bridge Partnership, a global leadership consultancy firm of British origin with a regional headquarter in Singapore. He is a father of two and exercises religiously to stay healthy and fit so as to keep up with his sporty teenage boys. And welcome to 938 Live, Kenny. And I must say, indeed, the working out has worked out for you very well.
Thank you, Eugene. Thanks for having me back.
Very good to have you back with us again, Kenny. Okay, so we're talking about turbocharging our learning and growth today. And I understand that this is, one of your key passions.
Right.
You really do have this love affair with learning and personal development. How did tell us about your own journey and how you managed to find this passion and now you're working in this passion as well.
All right. I think it began when I was young. I grew up in a not too rich family. Right now, we didn't have much resources, and if you want to learn something, you need to do it yourself. My mom.
You learn to be independent from a very young age.
They're not going to send us for lessons and all. And my mom always said this: so long as you're willing to learn, there's nothing you cannot do. So
Absolutely.
I think that whole idea of learning, began from young. And of course, it kind of translates to, work. When I used to work as a consultant, and you need to learn really fast. Right?
Yeah.
So the necessity to learn fast, plus the interest and the passion, shaped me into like a curious learner.
I see. As part of your consultancy work, I expect that when you come into a company, you have to, gain the knowledge of how the company works very quickly in order to advise the...
Right. They expect you to kind of get to speed really quickly.
Yeah. Hit the ground flying sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. So tell us about then your perception of learning. Then you want to share some examples of what you mean by learning? Of course, we are expanding the idea of learning, not just talking about grades and exams.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we look at learning, it's really about, learning as a way to help us develop and grow. Right. I mean, we only grow if we learn. You can do something for many times. If you don't learn and refine yourself, you don't really grow. Right. So, and in my current work right now, we work with a lot of multinationals. As you know, Asia is a growth region for most businesses. And most of the leaders or companies are faced with the challenge of how do we grow our leaders rapidly to meet the demand. Right? And most of the, whether it's middle managers or junior managers or senior managers, they all need to kind of rise really fast to meet up with the demand they have on them. So learning takes on a different context, right? And when we look at learning, there are many principles of learning, which I'm going to share more about. How do we turbocharge and speed that up? Because it will make a lot of difference for us to master what we need to do well quickly.
Yeah. And before we go into that, I'd like to get your opinion on learning because, as you mentioned, of course, consistent learning, lifelong learning is so important. But what do you say to people who say, okay, I've reached a certain level of learning and I'm quite comfortable where I am. I'm doing quite well. I'm earning the sort of pay and I'm quite comfortable where I am. So there really is no need for me to learn anymore. What do you say to these people?
I mean, there are few motivations for learning. One is necessity. So for some people, maybe there's no necessity, but there's also a thing about boredom. And when you begin to do something and the same thing over and over again, boredom will set in.
Yeah.
Right. Then we begin to start to learn something different or do something different. Learning allows you to do it well.
Correct. So we often hear people saying things like, "Oh, I've reached a plateau in my career."
Work is not interesting anymore.
Exactly, and that's because you've stopped learning and being curious about it. That's why you've lost that passion, and it very quickly goes into a downward spiral.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of people think about doing something different. Like they want to do good, they want to do social enterprise. Again, if you want to do something different, again you need to learn. Right, the experience that you have, may not fit what you need to do, in your subsequent stage of your life.
Okay, so we know that learning is very important, and we're talking about learning in all areas, of life. So, and your specialty in this sense is helping people to turbocharge their learning abilities, and that is something that's very useful for us in Singapore because we all want to do things very fast, right?
Yes.
So how do you actually help people do that?
I'd like to use a personal example. Right. And then we dissect some learning from that. Would that help?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'll take swimming for example. Right. Recently I picked up swimming. This is about
oh no, really?
July last year.
You only learned to swim that recently.
Well, I could always swim breaststroke if you call that swimming.
Right. Okay.
But when it comes to freestyle, up until last July, I can only do one lap.
I see.
Or I struggle to do one lap. Yeah. And it's quite embarrassing because I remember 2005, I took part in OSIM sprint event triathlon. And I did breaststroke the entire, first leg, right? And of course, you see people zooming past you, crawling. And it makes life easier because when you get to the bike event, all the bikes have gone. There's only my bike and a few other bikes are left.
Right. Okay. So front crawl is faster than breaststroke.
It's definitely faster. Right. So that's where and part of that came from. But in a short time of 2 weeks, right, and I progressed from 1 lap to 2 lap, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and then in 2 weeks I ended up started to swim 20 laps of freestyle. Yeah. I would like to share, just some of the learning, I took away, as I kind of progress on my swimming, and how do we apply that to other areas.
Okay, we'll have you elaborate on that using swimming as an example to dissect the lessons and bring us some tips to accelerate our learning here on A Slice of Life on 938 Live with me, Eugene Loh, and of course my guest Kenny To, an international leadership consultant and executive coach, one of the Asia Pacific directors of Bridge Partnership, a global leadership consultancy firm of British origin, and you can get more information at bridge-partnership.com. More here on A Slice of Life on 938 Live in just a while. I'm Eugene Loh here on A Slice of Life for your dose of do-it-yourself motivation and helping us turbocharge our learning and personal growth. Today is Kenny To, an international leadership consultant and executive coach with a passion for helping people uncover, develop and apply their unique gifts to make a positive impact to the world. He is one of the Asia Pacific directors of Bridge Partnership, a global leadership consultancy firm of British origin with a regional headquarters here in Singapore. Let's go back to your example of using swimming as an example to turbocharge your learning. And Kenny, you shared with us that you only picked up the front crawl recently.
Right.
So tell us how you turbocharged your learning of the front crawl.
Okay, just imagine the journey, right? I started with struggling to finish 1 lap, which is 50 meters. Yeah, panting like crazy.
Also, it was a stamina thing, and also because the moves
more
were...
than that. It's just technique. It's many things.
Right.
Breathing. Right.
Okay.
And 2 weeks later, the best moment was after I swam about 20 laps, and this guy next to me and kind of stopped me and asked, "I'm curious. I've been watching you. How do you learn to swim like that?" Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I couldn't imagine this happening to me, because all this time I had this belief that I wasn't born to swim. You see, I sink, I'm a sinker. Right?
Okay.
But to be kind of asked by a stranger in terms of how do you learn to swim like that, it was such a kind of it's a miracle for me.
So
right?
he watched your progress and he realized how quick it was.
Yes.
And you were, I mean, you taught yourself freestyle?
Okay, that comes the secret.
Okay.
And my answer to him was YouTube.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, nowadays there's nothing that you can't learn from YouTube, right? My son learned how to self-taught himself guitar on YouTube.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
and it's the same for me. I learned that if my kids can learn guitar, what can I do, right? I can learn about swimming. So YouTube was one of the thing, but I'll say more about that. But more importantly is I think, when you learn something, and the big reward in terms of, breaking through your own limiting belief about, I can't do this, now I can, was a big reward. So for some people, it's I'm not creative, I can't create, and then to, wow, I can actually create something. And so for me, it was about, I can't swim to, I now can swim.
Right. Okay.
Right,
So identifying those kind of like limitations in your or skills gaps, and then actually overcoming those challenges is very empowering.
Yeah, it's a big reward, big plus. It makes you want to look at what else can I not do or believe that I couldn't do, and learn, and do that, right? And so that was how it began, right? But YouTube aside, I think in terms of looking back at the lessons, what is the key thing? I look at it in learning in 3 stages, right? So the first question that we need to ask is, what is it that I'm learning? I mean, in this example, I was interested to learn how can I swim gracefully for 30 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. I was struggling. How can I swim gracefully in 30 minutes? I didn't talk about speed. Right now, it's about how, right? And can I swim gracefully?
So set yourself achievable goals at the beginning.
Something clear, something specific. It's not just about learning how to swim, freestyle, right? But for me, it's about 30 minutes gracefully. Graceful is an important word.
Okay.
Now, with that,
Not struggling like I said.
not struggling.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, I went online and Google, right, graceful swimming, and lo and behold, right, and there is, a kind of a YouTube video of this guy called Shinji Takeuchi. Right, he was a Japanese engineer who now became a head coach for a swimming technique called total immersion.
Oh.
Right, again, he's someone who used to struggle, and then, and learn the technique, right? So, and the video clip is very short, 2+ minutes. It's got 4 million overview. I think it's overtaken Michael Phelps, video in swimming. So I guess more people are interested to learn how to swim gracefully because we all can.
Yeah.
Right, not all of us can swim like Michael Phelps.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, and I went in and then I began to look at, what else can I learn from the YouTube? That's the first, because I travel a lot. Yeah. And it's not easy for me to sign up for a class. Yeah. So that was one. I mean, if you look at it from a other aspect of learning, so we teach leaders, and a lot of leaders want to learn how to coach. Right. So they look at what kind of things do I need to learn, in terms of how to coach more effectively or giving feedback. Yeah, how can I give feedback effectively, right? So the first question is what? Yeah, being specific, what you want to learn, right? That shapes where you kind of look for the learning. Yeah. The second important question is why. Right?
Why?
So
Yes.
When you have a big enough reason why you want to do something, you're more likely to kind of put in the effort to do it. Because
That affects your motivation.
yes,
Yeah.
because when you really want to learn something, it takes a lot of effort. Yeah, and that reason, the compelling reason, will allow you. So for me, the two parts in swimming. The first part is about personal fitness. So I basically, because I travel a lot, I travel 2 to 4 weeks a month. Right, I spend a lot of time on the plane. I run workshops. I'm on my feet, 8 to 9 hours a day. Yeah, and being able to stay at my best and stay fit was very important. Yeah.
Okay.
I used to use running, as my way of staying fit, but now that I've developed a back pain, right, running becomes quite hurtful. Yeah, and everybody will kind of recommend, you should try swimming. Swimming is good for your back.
Yeah,
right?
it's low impact.
Low impact, yes,
Yeah.
and you can swim until you're very old.
Yeah, and plus it's very relaxing for the mind. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's therapeutic.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what's one. One is personal fitness, right? And running doesn't work, so I switched to swimming. And then I stay in hotel, and you can always get a swimming pool. Right. So that's one. On a more corporate reason, I am part of the leadership, team, and one of the questions that I'm investigating is how do we run a business sustainably? So sustainable business sustainability become an important question. Right, I was hoping that from learning how to swim in a sustainable manner, right? What can I learn in terms of how do we run a business in a sustainable manner? And true enough, we found some part, because if you look at the breakthrough for me to swim longer distance, was finding a balance between pace and recovery. Right. The same with business. Right. The business has cycle. There's rhythm. Right. When the business is good, you run very hard. When business is down, right, rather than focusing on how to improve the bottom line, right, and the businesses are sustainable, they focus on building capability.
Okay.
Right? How to use the space to scale up, and scale up. Yeah.
Okay, so first we identify the what exactly we want to learn, and often it's about looking at the gaps in our skill sets, in our mindsets, and then trying to plug that gap. And then after that, the reason, the why, is very important. As you mentioned, it should go deeper than just because very often people have very superficial motivations and reasons for doing something. They will think, I want to lose weight, I want to look good, I want to earn more money, that sort of thing. But right when you get right down to it, what's going to move you forward is things like very fundamental things, like you want to stay fit and healthy. So that's going to be a thing that moves you forward. We're learning to turbocharge our learning today with Kenny To, an international leadership consultant and executive coach, one of the Asia Pacific directors of Bridge Partnership. And more information over at bridge-partnership.com. More from Kenny To. He's going to give us some top tips on how we can turbocharge our learning, and those tips will be available on my Facebook page, A Slice of Life, after the show today. So do stay with us here for more on turbocharging our learning. I'm Eugene Low on A Slice of Life R938 Live. Your dose of do-it-yourself motivation here on A Slice of Life Hour with me, Eugene Low, on 938 Live. Thank you very much for staying with us. And today we're learning how to turbocharge our learning, not just in areas as education and further education, that sort of thing, but in areas that matter to us. Accelerate our learning that we can live more fully and work more effectively. And earlier we learned about identifying those gaps, in our learning. Perhaps there are some areas in your life which you feel you thought before that you couldn't do, you're incapable of doing, but finding that challenge and then overcoming it and using that as a tool for self-empowerment. As my guest Kenny To was sharing with us earlier, he himself personally challenged himself because he never thought he could swim gracefully using the technique of freestyle, but he went onto YouTube and he found out how to do it there, and then he's achieved that goal. These days he's swimming like 20 laps very gracefully indeed. Kenny To is an international leadership consultant and executive coach with a passion for helping people uncover, develop and apply their unique gifts to make a positive impact to the world. He is one of the Asia Pacific directors of Bridge Partnership, a global leadership consultancy firm of British origin with a regional headquarters here in Singapore. And in this part of the show, Kenny, you have you're going to share with us 5 tips on how to turbocharge our learning.
Right. Yeah. So in a corporate learning space, there's a model called 70-20-10, which is quite popular, which says 70% of the learning comes from on the job, right? 20% comes from people, your boss, mentors, coaches, and 10% comes from active learning. 10 courses you read, right? So the 5 principles or 5 tips I'm going to share revolves around this. So the first 10%, the first key principle is about master the fundamental. Right. In anything that we learned, right, there's some basic core principles that we really need to invest a bit of time to kind of master that. So in this example, I was researching in graceful swimming. The technique was total immersion. It was developed by an American swim coach. It's all over the world. There's a company called Fish Like in Singapore that teaches that. It basically teaches you how to swim like a fish. Right. So if you check out fishlike.net, you can find out courses in there. But the 3 basic principles in this technique, right? So in terms of swimming, it's nothing to do with strengthening your kick or anything. But the first thing is about getting your balance right.
Right.
Okay. You get your body balance right. We find your natural balance. The second was about streamlining, right? And how do you actually, minimize the drag of resistance? That's more important, right, than actually how to kick harder or swim faster.
Okay, so it's
streamlining your body.
Moving from brute force and brawn to something that's more
graceful.
Graceful using the right techniques.
Yes, right. And the third thing was propulsion. So with freestyle, the propulsion comes mainly from the hand. So you work on how do you pull effectively, not much on the legs. Right. So
seriously,
but it comes in that order. You need to get the balance right, then focus on streamlining, and then work on your pull. Right.
Okay.
And when I follow that kind of 3 steps, it works magically.
Very interesting, because I've always found myself going back to breaststroke because front crawl is always quite it's quite tedious, isn't it? And then I'm paddling with my feet, caught in my legs quite a bit, thinking that is the one that helps move me forward. But you're saying that it's not. It's actually the arms movement.
Yes, precisely.
Okay.
Yep. It's the same like with business, right? I mean, you could do a lot of activity that doesn't add value, doesn't move you forward.
Yes,
you waste a lot of energy.
Yes.
Yeah. So learning the the fundamental, you can get it from experts, from courses, but invest time, learn the fundamentals.
Okay.
Everything has a secret. Now the second tip, right, it's about learning from mistakes and feedback. Yeah, this is where coaches or mentors come into place. Right? So when I started swimming, anyone that I know who swims, I ask for kind of tips. If you swim with me, so I had a friend who was a triathlete. Garrett was on your show before,
yes,
right? And he's an Ironman. Right? We were in a hotel together, and he asked me to swim, and he showed me some, where I've gone wrong. Right? My wife, I would drag my wife to swim with me and say, look, watch out for my hand, watch out for my legs. Tell me, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
So getting feedback was quite important, and learning from mistakes. Right? So the next thing I Googled was common mistakes that swimmers make.
Right.
So the moment you are aware and avoid some of the mistakes, I think you make leap and bounds in your development.
That's so important, right? A third-party perspective, because very often we aren't able to see where we're going wrong.
Right. Yeah. So learning feedback, mistakes, So the first thing about learning and from people. Now the other 3 tips revolves around doing. So let's say going back to the managers, right, 70% of the learning come from actually on the job. So the other 70% of the learning come from really doing your time in a pool, right? So the third tip is about deliberate practice.
Okay.
The word deliberate is very important. So it's not just about practice, do your laps, do your 10 laps, do your 20 laps, right? Deliberate in the sense that you really focus, right? Today I'm going to work on, my balance, right? Just that, right? I'm going to pay attention, you develop that awareness of your body, you develop that mind-body connection, right? And you really stay focused. And tomorrow I'm going to focus on just improving, my pull. Right, so I pay attention to my arm, where do I enter the water, where do I exit the water.
Right. Okay. It's not just about spacing out, right? It's about focusing deliberately on that particular thing you're trying to improve on that very day.
Particularly just that, right? Or for this exercise, for this 10 minutes, I'm going to focus on that. And the same with other things, right? So when we teach leaders, for instance, you want to be, a good, you want to give feedback to your employees, right? Today I'm going to focus on giving positive feedback. Just that, and I practice that. Right, and then maybe next week I focus on giving a bit more challenging feedback to someone who is challenging. I want to focus on that. Right, and that focus or deliberation allows you to really zoom in, and pay attention. It's all about your mindset awareness. Right, so swimming, for instance, as my coach, right, the one of the head coach at the company said, it's not just a skill exercise. It's actually mind-body connection.
Okay, that's fascinating, because it's not just about people assume that just because day in day out you're doing the same thing that equals practice. But it really isn't, because if you're doing the same things day in day out, things are not going to change, right? So it's about every day focusing or identifying one key area you want to improve, and then working on that. Fantastic.
And the worst thing is, I begin to pay attention to this more because I swim very often. The fear is, the more frequent I swim, the more I build a habit on the wrong thing. Right, so it's important to get some guidance, avoid the mistake first. Otherwise, I'll be repeating the mistake, and build a bad habit.
I see.
So getting guidance, correct your mistakes.
So you always have someone watching you
whenever there is a chance, and I'll get people.
Okay. Right? So that we don't slip into practicing the wrong things.
Yes. So there's a saying that practice makes permanent. Now the fourth tip is about better than the last. So every time I hit the water, I have this mindset: how do I do slightly better than the last? So it could be distance, right? So when I started with 1 lap, next time today I'm going to do 2 laps. Right, I double that, but you can't double that, otherwise it's exponential. After 8, I become 12 and 14 and all.
Yeah.
Right, and it could be strength, right? You know, so when I done enough 20 laps, you know, I put on gloves.
Oh,
the
right.
gloves makes you swim a bit harder because of the increased
resistance. Is it? Okay.
So I work on my strength, and then it could be working on my weak side. I always breathe on the right side. Now I kind of practice, you know, and you know, do better on my left side.
Oh, so many things you can actually play with, right?
Yeah,
And
just
tweak.
variety, right?
Just for that simple thing of swimming.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
But the whole mindset is, how can I do better than the last? Right? It's a bit of the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, continuous improvement. Right? You know, as you build that, then you constantly get better. All right.
Great.
Now, the last tip, right? Really is about making it a ritual. Okay, let me explain that. Okay, a lot of us rely on willpower. Right? I want to learn, you know, in 20 days or 2 months, I want to get there. But willpower, like I said, sometimes it's weak. You know, you have a long day. All you want to do is just laze on the sofa and chill.
Yeah, willpower can fail us sometimes.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, you know, when we're tired.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I do a lot of training, and after 9 days on my feet, and 9 hours on my feet, I really just want to, you know, lie in a bed and sleep. Right? So what helps is to develop a ritual. So when I first started doing this, I had a ritual of, you know, swim before dinner. So no matter how tired I am, right, you know, I will hit the pool.
I see.
Right, get fresh, freshen up, and then I go for dinner.
Okay.
Right, you know, so that makes it, after a while, it becomes a habit. Like, you know, right, no matter how tired I am, it's time to swim.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like parents tell their children, right, homework before play.
Yeah.
Right, you know, it's just do your homework and then you play. Right?
So kind of like you make it, you schedule it at a specific time, make it a habit. After a while, you kind of like condition yourself. You condition yourself psychologically and physically also to want to do that thing at that time. Because somehow if you don't, then it feels a bit off.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't have dinner without a swim.
Yes, something is missing.
Yeah?
So the ritual helps develop the habit. Right, and you don't ask, should I swim or should I not swim? No, just do it. It's time to swim. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
So 5 tips, like if I just round up, right? First, master the fundamentals, right? Get the core principles. 2, learn from mistakes and feedback. 3, deliberate practice. I know, focus, be mindful of what you want to work on. 4, better than the last time, right? Keep improving. And lastly, make it a ritual, such that you don't rely on willpower.
All right, thank you very much, Kenny, for coming in today. And you've been hearing from Kenny To all about turbocharging your learning in any aspect. You can apply these five tips, and I'll be sharing these 5 tips from Kenny To on my A Slice of Life page on Facebook after the show. Do check it out. And thank you very much, Kenny, for coming in. Kenny To is an international leadership consultant and executive coach with a passion for helping people uncover, develop, and apply their unique gifts to make a positive impact. He's also one of the Asia Pacific directors of Bridge Partnership, a global leadership consultancy firm. And you can get more information over at bridge-partnership.com. And if you have something to share with me as well on the show, do get in touch via email. It's eugene@mediacorp.com.sg. I'm Eugene Loh. This has been A Slice of Life here on 938 Live. Thank you so much for your company today.